All right. Let's see. Let's see how we're doing here. Uh, um, Hopefully the audio is okay. You can hear my voice. The microphone is not muted. uh, um, and whatnot. Actually, we need more light. Uh, uh, See, now that was a good reason to actually check in before we go absolutely final. Okay, so let's go back to the waiting room, and then we'll pick up in about 6 minutes. guess I can tell that the microphone is unmuted by the fact that it's, when I talk, it ducks the music volume. Hey folks, it's T2sday. Thanks for stopping in. I'm Dave Ackley. Here is my clickbaity after a fashion title card this time, from Valentino Breitenberg to Daniel Dennett. Demos all the way. Clearly, Valentino Breitenberg, if you've been following along, we've been building Breitenberg vehicles, and Dan Dennett we'll talk about at the end. So let's get started and check in with our friend BV. Sometimes everything seems to go bad at once. BV was down in the dumps after overhearing some people saying BV was just a simulation. It was the emphasis on just that really hurt, thought BV. At the same time, the Truth and Research Audit Committee at the funding agency had opened an inquisition about some of the project's Q1 deliverables. In particular, BV appeared to be able to see its own underside, which, though no doubt interesting in its way, really ought to be impossible as a matter of physics. At a committee hearing, the project director's initial denial collapsed when the data was presented, and after huddling with the lawyers, the director apologized for the misstatement, but pointed out that the Q1 milestone, strictly speaking, only required that BV react to visual input without requiring the input source to be physically possible. The project ended up paying a fine equal to 79 minutes of the project's burn rate and promising physically plausible visual input in the Q2 results. And then the word came down the line, make it so. Now Seneca, the summer intern, had been trying to cheer BV up by explaining that simulation was really just a relative thing, and everybody was a simulation to everybody else, really. But BV wasn't having any of it. I mean, look at me, moaned BV. My eyes, they're just drawn on, like makeup. What the heck? And Seneca said, look, BV, maybe if you really, really wish for it and get a good long sleep, maybe you'll be more real when you wake up. And then Seneca sang the Sleepy, Sleepy BV song, and BV's painted-on eyes didn't change at all, but BV fell fast asleep. And the designers and engineers went to work, using all kinds of BV simulations and meta-simulations, and they tried this and that in hypothetical land. And when BV awoke, the world looked different, and BV felt different, bigger, somehow solider. And BV had eyes. So that's it. BV gets more hardware even if the software is not really ready to catch up to it. So, okay, these were the goals for today. BV super fun, mind-changing demos on the T2 matrix, damn it. Essentially failed at that. I gave myself a little plus minus because there was a tiny little bit of progress, but it was really very tiny. On the other hand, fun is fundamental. Had some tremendous fun this month, and I'll try to tell you about it as quickly as possible. All right, so here's what I want to talk about today. T-0 and launch. This is T-0. This is the conclusion, officially speaking, of the T2 Matrix Brain Challenge, where we were trying to build a model not of biochemicals and atoms, but of neurons and connections and more cognitive stuff somehow. And how did we do? Well, all right, so here was the path starting last October, ending today. Breitenberg vehicles, yeah, we definitely got those in spades. Sensory motor homunculus, well, we kind of got that. The one that we have is kind of lame, but it's not awful. Stretch goals we did not have. And overall, I feel, made a lot of progress, but utterly failed at getting brain on the T2 matrix. This is the progress that we've got, and it's right here on the table right now. That's the keymaster up here and 3 other T2 tiles that are actually arranged in the pattern that BV's brain currently deploys at. So if we get stuff running here, which we don't have yet, we might be able to see BV's brain running on this stuff. So I rebuilt the Ulam compiler on this thing. That took 4 hours. So we're getting there. Bottom line, we're going to go for T+1. We're going to push back the launch officially and take 1 more month to see if we can't get BV into better shape, BV's brain into better shape, number 1, and to get it going on the T2 matrix, or at least on some tiles. If it's not the whole matrix, if we don't need it, well, so be it. Okay, and let's check back in with BV before we move on. BV loved the new eyes. They were so physical. Even the bad parts of that, like when a yellow ball hit BV in the eye, that was amazing too. The connection, so physical, so real. BV tried to be cynical, like, "Hey, Seneca, what does a full self-driving vehicle have to do to get a mouth around here?" But Seneca was all, "Well, step 1 is to need one." And anyway, BV was still too excited to play with the eye stalks and eye boxes and irises and everything. And BV said, "Hey, Seneca, I need something to do with my new eyes. I want to do something." And Seneca said, "Well, BV, there is one job the lab really needs to get done, but it's a big, hard job." Seneca paused, and BV was all, what? And Seneca said, "Well, the lab needs to clear all these yellow balls off of this checkerboard, and BV was, "I can do that." "But it's not just one ball," said Seneca. "It's all of them." But BV said, "I can do it. I can do it." And Seneca was, "I don't know. You'd have to do multiple different tasks and change your mind at the appropriate time. It's not easy." But BV was just, put me in, I can do it." And in the end, Seneca put BV on the job secretly because full yellow ball clearing was a Q4 deliverable, and it would not do to have it done now. But Seneca shouldn't have worried. It did not go well. The first ball clearing was fine, since BV had been doing that for a long time. And in fact, the new no-red behavior to back out of the red zone worked well too. But BV was very afraid of the red and spent a lot of time crawling backwards until BV could see very little red. Then, in moving into its new hunt mode, where it swings left and right to try to see what's around it, it seemed to have an unerring ability to head pretty straight for the edge over and over again, and that went on for a very long time. BV explored the corners and the edges, and again, never once fell into the void, but also never once found another yellow ball. There was work to do. So that's BV, and that's why we're going for T+1. I felt like I was really close, but BV's not doing the job very well. Okay, that's the brain launch. Outreach and education. Lou Wilson, Toad Pond, and I submitted a paper in the last month called Dialogues on Natural Code. And the idea is, natural code is what's happening here. I'm transmitting code to you right now. And it's like, the idea is, what if we could take all those ideas of programming and code and all that stuff and apply them to humans and natural language? It was a ton of fun. It's a 9-page essay. We sent it to Onward Essays, which is a sort of a most way out component of the Splash sort of meta conference these days, which I think is going to happen in October in Pasadena, something like that. And this was Lou and I on Zoom. We got together for a bunch of time to hash this stuff back and forth and work it up and to make the essay itself be kind of a meta recursive in the famous Toad Pond style way, and we shall see. I really hope it gets accepted. Okay, next steps. Saint Step is one of the OG members of the community who was compiling Ulam code in 2016. That is before the T2 Tile Project video YouTube channel even started. Made a comment last month. Are the elements themselves aware of the tile boundaries? And that's a really good question. Could they self-center, or did you have to seed it directly in the center? And, so the answer was officially Ulam totally hides the tile structure. Ulam code could detect it, I claimed, by comparing event rates across sites, but so far I just stick the thing in the middle. Well, that's a problem for getting onto the matrix, because when you seed on the matrix, the code just plops the seed down at a random spot in the tile that you picked. So I engaged with this problem, and I have a little bit to look at here. So here I plop down this tile finder atom that its job is to figure out the boundaries of the tile. And these tiles may look a little weird because I was experimenting with different geometries. And so it started in this thing, it figures out there's the edge, it boils away everything else, and then you see it doesn't actually identify the entire tile. It identifies the central part of it, which is where the fast events happen, where you're four steps away from an edge, so that the event window doesn't cross the edge and you don't have to get a lock to a neighbor in order to do it. So that's what BV's brain is now using. Every time we start up MFMS to do BV's brain, Tile Finder runs first, finds the center, and then the rest of the startup sequence goes from there. Okay, so that's the Tile Finder side quest. BV's brain, we got a ton more stuff to do. We got to get more persistent state in the brain. I mean, that the classic Breitenberg vehicle, that's the point. It doesn't have any persistent state of its own. It has complex relationships with outside stimulus to reactions, and you can do so much with that. That's the essential Valentino Breitenberg insight. But then we go beyond that by having persistent state internally. And the grip that we talked about last time is an example of persistent internal modifiable state. Okay, and then next month I really want plans for the rest of 2024. I've been doing this for a long time. I'm thinking maybe I want to take a break, at least for a while. We shall see. Okay, so BV clears the table running on the T2 matrix, of which it currently can pocket one ball and that's it, and have more fun, big fun. Big fun is fun. And so forth. And finally, Dan Dennett is a philosopher. I am not a philosopher, but some of my friends are philosophers. He died a couple of weeks ago. I wrote a little 500-byte comment in the Fediverse that I thought I would try to recite here today, just as can't even say the word, just as a remembrance. I love Dan Dennett. Fuck that. I love Dan still. He's just dead. Dan and I overlapped at Tufts, a 1970s undergrad me. But we never met until a 1990s workshop at the Santa Fe Institute, spinning A-life models and riffing on what it all might mean. He became a mentor to me, wrote a letter for my tenure. We became friends of a sort, with only rare meetings and emails and precious calls. Our last emails were in 2021. Carry on, he wrote, his last words to me. And I replied, my king. Thank you, Dan. And that is it. Thanks so much for checking in. I hope to see you next time. And that's it. I stayed. Look at that. I stayed under 15 minutes. Uh, um, I guess let's go check in on the views. Oh, hey, I see hearts. Thank you, thank you, folks with hearts. And yeah, so uh, there's lots of other stuff that could be said. Certainly, this could be said about Dan Dennett. I mean, one thing is he's most known as a cognitive philosopher interested in AI and things like that, which of course is very trendy. But my sense of him, my knowing of him, was that it was not intelligence wasn't some special separate thing. It was really just about natural machinery and how natural machinery can arise, how can persist, and how it can operate. And so, from my point of view, talking to Dan Dennett about artificial life, there was no bright or even fuzzy line between artificial life and artificial intelligence. I went to one of his talks at the Santa Fe Institute, not that many years ago, where he was talking about neurons and how neurons, in addition to being these magical signaling cells for computation, are also still cells. And they can actually move. They don't move very much. They move when they're growing during development, but then they usually just dig in and do their thing, but they still have the ability to move. And, so we were doing that. We were doing that last year with the A-Life Challenge. We were trying to get cells that computed and could move, could heal and reproduce, all of that stuff. So the thing that was so great about Dan is he was just so clear. I mean, I had one tiny little disagreement with him, basically. I mean, I have this thing that, right, I believe that neutral point of view exists. And I know it's sort of trendy and to be cynical and claim there is no such, it's all subjective and so forth. But I disagree. And I think neutral point of view is a property of certain kinds of natural code, and it can be counterposed with partisan code. And if you think there's something out in the world that is so bad that all you can imagine to do is to fight it, well then, okay, that if you have to do that, you have to do that. But then you're in a partisan mode. You're supporting or opposing some particular piece of code, some particular body of code, and supporting or opposing the other people that support or oppose the code as it happens for you. But there's also, it seems to me, the developer mindset, where you rise up above the this versus that of the code, and you look at the code itself and you say, how is it structured, how do we want to do this, and so forth. And what Dan was so great at was rising up to that level of just looking at stuff fairly clearly, and not being partisan about it. And so my one beef with him really was about religion, that he actually is in his book about religion, that one, although he talks about it in lots of contexts, that he had some language which was partisan, and that didn't ring true to me. It seemed like it was below him, but that was the horse that he was choosing to be a partisan about. And sure, religion has been a cause of an awful lot of problems, and we don't necessarily want to think about giving it a bye for all the problems that it's caused in history. But I still want to believe, I still want to search for the developer's point of view on religion rather than adopting the partisan side. So it's neither atheism nor agnosticism nor belief. It's we are coders. What do we think about this code? This code serves a number of purposes. And if we're just going to say there's something wrong with that, well, then it's going to be on us as developers to propose some alternative code. And no matter what you propose, no matter what you choose, no matter what code you embrace, it's going to have limitations and approximations and places where it doesn't work very well, because that's the nature of code. Code is a hack. It's trying to make some proxy for an unknowable reality that you cannot, you can only see the little bit that's right around you, and you infer everything else that's going on around you, further away in space and time. And I think we think as humans, we do a pretty good job of that, and we probably do by comparison to cats and dogs and many of the other animal species on the planet. But and again, who knows out in the outside world? But there will be limits. There will be a specific possibilities that you cannot go outside the light cone. If something would have to go faster than the speed of light, or use more than E equals mc squared energy for the amount of matter it's got, and so on and so forth. That's not going to happen. That's our faith. That physics is actually real. How the consequences of physics being real is that we are never going to be able to compute all the way to the perfect answer, because we are going to be mere machines made out of matter, subject to the limits of matter and energy and heat and so forth. And we are going to have to settle for approximate answers. And that means there is no one perfect language. There is no, once we understand this, then all problems will be solved. Gentlemen, let us compute. That cannot happen. And we know that from, Turing incompleteness, and we know that from Gödel, the whole thing. So that means we are in a situation where we are arguing about, should we embrace this code base or should we embrace that code base to deal with overlapping or very similar or almost disjoint sets of phenomena out in the universe that we are going to characterize in this way or in that way or in some combination thereof. And that's where we're in the land of, well, we can be partisans. No, you're stupid and we're right. And the only correct thing to happen is to you and all of your compatriots and all of your supporters should all be erased, and all of your resources should be taken, and extra copies of our code should be deployed on them, and then the world is better. And it's like, okay, good work if you can get it. But it would be nice if you had overwhelming force before you decided to take that path. It's the global phase war that we saw 2 episodes ago. And if you can't win the global phase war, you shouldn't fight the global phase war. That's the fundamental principle. And that's why I have this idea that, we should be going for, we should understand the neutral point of view. We should understand the characteristics, the signature, the hallmark features of the neutral point of view, and be able to distinguish it from the partisan point of view in gross characteristics and in the tiniest tone of voice, in the tiniest arch of an eyebrow, or whatever it is, that we're not going to be able to disagree in the end. That's the hope. That if we believe in the neutral point of view and we understand and we unpack it, then we can reach a better code base, a more consistent code base. There will be winners and losers if we shift code from one style to another, because there always is. But it's that's just par for the course. That's what we know from Turing incompleteness and undecidability and the whole nine yards. More what we know from computational complexity, that, the number of possibilities just explodes too fast for a finite physical universe. And so Dan Dennett was producing reams, books of this, looked to me almost entirely neutral point of view code, rebalanced with the edges sanded off and so forth. And even most of his discussion about religion was pretty good too. But there was a few little spots. There was in reading through the religion book where that was a clunker, because that was partisan like that. And, that's like the highest praise I can give to another mind. It is that, out of all the stuff you did, yeah, fantastic, incredible, great, unbelievably clear, and one little clunker in a very understandable place. That's my experience of Daniel Dennett. Super lucky. I mean, there was no reason for him to take me on, except, this sort of symbolic connection that we had both been at Tufts University, I as an undergrad, he as a professor, even though we had never met. But, there was a little bit of a kindred spirit. So, we really didn't talk very often. We had a handful of phone calls that were amazing, like actual 1 hour slots that we would talk about issues and go back and forth. And I argued with him, and I think I might have kind of cornered him once or twice, and he certainly showed plenty of the philosopher's jujitsu that I didn't know about the rough and tumble of how to go back and forth in these arguments, in these discussions. Okay. Anyway, I didn't really mean to rattle on quite this much, but Dan is a great role model for me, and the folks that there are plenty of partisans in philosophy, in Western philosophy, in 20th century Western philosophy, and fans and opponents of Gilbert Ryle and so forth, and that's fine, and they're all having their takes for and against. In fact, at the 2 times ago A-Life conference, one of the keynotes was a philosopher who was kind of anti-Dennett, and Dennett was a punching bag, and naturally I thought few of the blows landed, but hey, I'm a Dennett partisan. I mean, I tried to be neutral in talking just now, but all right. Anyway, that's it. So I think maybe we'll call this. We have a couple of folks that have been here, but unless there are any questions or comments or thoughts, I'm ready to move on and try to get this thing rendering to go up and to see about the rest of the day. Also, I've been daring myself to think about not leaving the live streams up after they're done. Just having them be open to anybody who shows up at the time, but then having them go private or even delete them or whatever it is afterwards. It goes against my open source ethics that, I'm just supposed to put the stuff out there. But we'll see. I think, a better thing to do would be to make more compelling content that people felt the need to show up right now. And this was the idea that I had the other night, that, if I want people to show up, thank you. If I want people to show up for a live stream, I have to do the news, so that there will be some reason to show up now rather than a month from now. And so, for me, Dan Dennett is dead. That's the news. Okay, all right. So that's it. I'm gonna stop the stream, and hope to see everybody on the internet. something like that. All right, thanks, folks, for people who are making happy faces and 100s and stuff like that. Uh, uh, I'll take feedback of any possible sort. That is it. Thank you, folks, and I hope to see you. Like I already said, hope to see you again.